Hello, and thank you for joining us today for a MasterControl hosted webinar. We're going to be talking about some of the main reasons why pharma and medtech manufacturers should digitize. I'd like to welcome Marty Smythe and Caitlin Minton-Smith from our go-to-market team. They're going to go ahead and take it from here. Thanks.
Thanks, Jen, and thanks everybody for joining us today. My name is Marty Smythe. I'm the SVP of Go-to-Market Strategy here at MasterControl. Really excited to have you join us today, and we're really excited to be able to present to you findings from our recent research study that we fielded to life science manufacturers. What we're really going to focus on today is 4 reasons pharma and medtech manufacturers should really focus on digitization. And joining me today is Caitlin Minton-Smith, who I will have introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Caitlin Minton-Smith, and I am the Senior Product Marketing Manager for our manufacturing solution. MasterControl has been a leader in life sciences for almost 30 years, which has given us a unique perspective in the industry. And what we've seen is that a lot of manufacturers seem to be stuck using paper-based production records. However, we've also noticed that those companies who embrace digital manufacturing tend to lead the way and see better results. Because of this seeming contradiction, we wanted to connect this market research to understand how you and your peers were approaching digital transformation. In today's webinar, we'll learn about some of the results from our recently released market research report, as Marty mentioned, including how we conducted the research, what the research revealed about your peers and their trends toward digitization, and ways to start embracing digital manufacturing. A central reason for this study was to find out why companies who are developing some of the most innovative tools and therapies are still operating in an environment that is largely manual, siloed, and heavily reliant on paper. The research analyzed quantitative and qualitative responses from 152 companies across pharma, biotech, biologics, and medical device, and focused on understanding how leaders assess theirs and their peers' digital maturity today and into the future. At the highest level, we found that your peers are in fact adopting and embracing digital manufacturing. However, we also discovered that digitization tends to be fragmented. 65% of leaders said they were in the process of increasing digitization, and nearly all respondents noted that they were actively seeking to increase their digital maturity over the next 5 years. However, we also discovered that full saturation of digital maturity was limited and tended to focus on high-value lines or sites. To tell us a bit more about how we helped respondents define digital maturity and MasterControl's multi-tier maturity model, I'll hand it over to Marty.
Thanks, Caitlin. Yeah, so as Caitlin mentioned, the research was based largely in part around a maturity model. I'm sure many of you have seen multiple variations of maturity models across different parts of your organization, from different consulting companies, from different vendors. It's not so important that there is an absolute right maturity model. The thing that's important is that there is a framework by which you can assess where you are today in terms of your digital maturity and where you'd like to be, and have a way to path yourself there in a construct that makes sense to you. And the other thing that's really nice within a maturity model for research purposes is it allows you to benchmark yourself against a peer set. So we'll take you through quickly here exactly how we structured that maturity model. So it gives you a reference point for how people responded to the survey, and therefore how you can interpret the data that we're presenting to you. So the first step of the maturity model is pretty straightforward: manual. When we say manual, you can take that as a proxy for almost entirely paper-based operations. From the way in which you're designing your processes, to the way in which you're scheduling and deploying resources, to the way in which operators are managing a production line end-to-end, to the way in which you're reconciling the finished product data and doing batch release and review and release, is all heavily paper-based. So manual should make sense. There are a lot of people within life sciences that are still in this manual phase, and they are looking at ways in which they can take their first steps towards digitization. Many of the other people we interviewed are well along their path on the journey, so we'll start to take you through some of the other steps. the next step forward is what we've just generally called digital. Now, digital is, a fairly broad category. The way that we're defining it for the research and the way that people responded to it was a simple proxy that you have digitized at least some aspects of your manufacturing process. So for some companies, this could be the fact that they have a manufacturing resource management system in place to help them with scheduling and assigning people to shifts and to tasks. For others, that means they put in a digital weigh and dispense system. And then for some, it means they've put in a electronic batch record or EDHR system. So it can vary a great deal between organizations, but it means you have taken some meaningful step towards digitalizing a critical process or set of processes within your manufacturing environment. And it's a really important first step. We also wanted to look at what does it mean when you take a step beyond that? And so the way we categorize that is connected. And connected is really looking at saying, now if you put in a ERP system, is that enterprise resource planning system that you're managing your transaction, maybe your BOM or bill of materials, and you're sending that into your production environment through a work order. Is that a connected system into a digital production system, an electronic batch record, an EDHR, a manufacturing execution system? Is that a connected digital experience? If so, you're starting to get into that connected world. And that means data is connected, operations are connected. You can go forward, you can go backwards with your placing orders and doing your reconciliation. So you know materials going in, you know how to reconcile materials coming back out at the end of production, and you have more real-time visibility into that. It also extends to things like equipment and your integration through either your control systems or an IoT apparatus, but you're basically tying multiple digital applications together to give you more seamless, more automated production. This is an area where a lot of companies are trying to get to, and it's definitely an aspiration for a lot. Not all that many have actually achieved this, but going a step further, you get to intelligent. And intelligent does tend to be an area where it tends to be more forward planning, goal-oriented. But once you have the unified data from a connected set of systems, there is the potential to start to put in real-time optimization efforts, put in machine learning, AI-driven models that help you optimize, help you make better decisions, things like that. So we structured this research so that people could identify in any one of these categories, understand where their peer set was, and then also have a sense of where they wanted to go moving forward. So based off of that construct, we started to dive in and ask people questions in a research format that was both survey-based so that we could get to the numbers that Caitlin said and get enough people responding to it. But we also did some interviews with individuals to dive a little bit deeper and balance that out. And so what we want to do now is start to take you through some of the key learnings that we had as we went through that research and the findings from it. And the first one we wanted to talk through, and one of the main reasons we see people wanting to not just digitize, but move to connected and then move to intelligent, is increased visibility. I think many of you in manufacturing operations know that you can't fix or you can't optimize what you can't see. And if you can't see it in real time, every degree away from real time is an opportunity for running more product in a suboptimal environment, creating errors, creating waste, creating scrap, all of those things that you're trying to optimize out of your production environment starts with, do I have access to data in real time to make the best decisions possible? And when you think about not being in a digital situation, being in a manual, that information you need is on paper. Now that can be pulled out of paper manually and put into a digital system as simple as Excel that helps you run things, or upload it into something that goes into more of a database and can be analyzed, and you can do your optimization. But you have a long period of manual, time-intensive, cost-intensive process just to get the data from its state in paper to a state in which you can use it more effectively. So a lot of customers and a lot of the people that responded to this survey are looking at, how do I put in digital systems? How do I connect them so that I have better visibility? I can make better decisions, I can improve my processes, and I can really look for opportunities to be more effective in my core purpose, which is to produce safe products faster, cheaper. And so that's really a starting point and a driver for a lot of the feedback we got in the research survey. And the next thing is one that I'll have Caitlin take us through and look at one of the other big drivers that we saw come to light.
Thanks, Marty. The second reason we heard why manufacturers kind of seek to embrace digital manufacturing is to improve cross-departmental collaboration. So both based on the research and our own experience with manufacturers in this space, they rely on a vast network of systems and technology to deliver their treatments and therapeutics. And when you are based in paper, it makes it really hard to connect these systems together. In fact, it makes it pretty much impossible. So to achieve optimal efficiency, it's really important that these systems integrate and exchange information seamlessly. What we saw in the research was that leaders in pharma and medtech know that if they want to stay ahead, they need to embrace digitization. They need to connect systems and people throughout manufacturing and across departments to really be able to increase the visibility that Marty was talking about and to drive their businesses forward.
Yeah, and as Caitlin mentioned, staying ahead of the competition is one of the big drivers that we saw come out of the research as well. And so you're looking at a lot of different scenarios. You can have organizations that are operating established, relatively strong margin products that are looking at ways to produce things even more efficiently, because every way to cut costs and increase productivity matters, because they're competing in markets that are competitive and that have other products in those spaces. And then we also talked to a number of companies that are doing advanced therapeutics, and the ability to bring those advanced therapeutics to market in a meaningful way depends so much on being able to scale up manufacturing in a cost-effective way. So you don't have an advanced therapeutic that's, does amazing things, but hits the market at $3 to $5 million per treatment, which for a select few can make a world of difference, change lives, save lives. But at scale, it needs to be something that can be developed and manufactured much more efficiently if it's going to have a maximum impact. And so we definitely talked to all sides of that equation and dug in, but they all frame it in a way of, we're doing this and we're looking at digital efforts to help us stay ahead of our competition.
The final reason that we heard from folks in the survey about why they were looking toward digital maturity was probably the most obvious, and that was to resolve the issues that are inherent to manual paper-based operations. Almost 70% of our respondents noted that these manual process inefficiencies are what led to a lot of issues for them. Some of the top ones that they cited were siloed manufacturing systems, missing or unusable data, human errors, and compliance issues. All things that can impact, as Marty was saying, really not only staying ahead of the competition, but also making sure that you're getting your therapeutics out into the market as quickly as possible. And because manual process inefficiencies were the leading cause for digitization, we wanted to take a moment right now and dig into these four and talk about each of them a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think the first place we want to dive in a bit is the idea of disconnected. And so we've seen this at multiple levels of the maturity model from the participants in the study. And you can look at it as paper-based processes are inherently disconnected from a data perspective. They take a manual intervention to merge and analyze data from different aspects of operation that are in paper. But we definitely also saw this in the digital area, where companies had made really good investments in discrete digital systems to do one part of their operations, and they were seeing real results from that. But as they looked at how to enhance it moving forward, the concept of being disconnected or siloed from a system perspective was something that they highlighted as why they are trying to get to that connected stage and why they believe getting to that connected stage will yield tremendous benefits from productivity, optimization, and a whole, plethora of other areas of their operations. They just need to get systems talking to systems and data from those different systems to be in a usable format that's easily accessed and then analyzed. And that is a big driver from moving not just from paper to digital, but digital to connected.
So Marty talked a lot about this and really this idea of data. And not only does data become very disconnected in a paper-based system, however, you also see a lot of data issues in a paper-based system. So beyond not being able to use that data for things like forecasting or for making better decision-making, you also see that because there aren't any built-in checks and balances in a manual paper-based environment, you can have people on the line or your operators skipping things or forgetting to sign or data field. And all of these delays can add up. They can start to build up and really result not only in delays of review and release, but also significant lost productivity. Because if you take them at the macro level, a lot of little tiny paper cuts can add up pretty quickly. So we really heard in the research, and we see in our day-to-day talking among our own customers, that when you transition into that digital solution, you can improve throughput. You can take advantage of all of those data points to make those better decisions. And you can really start to not only mine your data, but ensure that your data is accurate moving forward.
Yep, and you think about, all of these complex, more advanced applications that people are trying to implement into their manufacturing process. And they're going to make amazing breakthroughs in the way in which we manufacture the future of medicine and the future of medical devices. But when we dug even deeper, one of the main things that they're still trying to optimize at all levels is preventing human error. Everybody loves their teams. They've put in a tremendous amount of effort into training operators, into developing and refining processes, into putting into place checks and balances to make sure that things are caught and prevented before they have material impact on production. But at the end of the day, preventable human errors is still a huge focus. Up to 40% of all deviations are still caused by some form of human error. And the more ways in which they can put not just digital systems that allow an individual to make a mistake in a digital system the same way they allowed it to happen in a paper-based system, but put in digital systems that have built-in guidance, built-in checks, built-in limits, thresholds, that have alerts, notifications, that even if an operator is attempting to do the task correctly as they were trained, if something is off, either ambient and in the humidity, the pH, things like that, that are out of their control, they don't move the process forward, they're alerted, and they can make the change that's needed. Or if it's as simple as, Caitlin mentioned, even in a digital system, sometimes we can fat finger something in. You meant to hit right there and you hit something else. You meant to type in, a certain measurement and you missed a number on it. That's fine if the system can catch it, alert it, have you change it, have the change control in place that you can move forward and still be compliant is a big factor. And so people are looking more and more to the systems to not just digitize, but be somewhat intelligent or smart in how they digitize so that they can help, prevent human errors from transferring from a paper-based system to a digital and a connected system. So that's something that is still front and center and something that, really came through in the research.
It's a great point, Marty, and really leads into kind of the fourth of this that we're going to dive into for manual process inefficiencies, and that's really compliance issues. And you talked a little about this, that just taking your manual environment and making it electronic without this idea of a smart system doesn't necessarily make you more compliant. What really helps to prevent those compliance issues are having systems in place that make it almost impossible for people to make mistakes or people to fat finger something or to put in a wrong limit. And we know that in these manual environments, a lot of these errors don't go, or they go undiscovered rather, until a batch is completed and it's ready to ship. And this is the point where it's almost heartbreaking because everything's ready to go, but we all know that a batch really isn't ready to ship until the paperwork's done. And if that paperwork starts to reveal needs for corrections or issues, those all can ladder up into a regulatory or compliance issue. We see and we saw in the research that folks who are really embracing digital manufacturing, that they take advantage of things like required fields or limits or linked SOPs so that you ensure that your operators and that your production is always following the proper steps and the proper procedures. And frankly, when you're able to effectively manage all of this data input, you're essentially able to manage your compliance and you stop issues from becoming an issue, which really means that your compliance issues become a thing of the past. So at this point, you've heard us talk about how great digital maturity is, and you might be thinking, that all sounds awesome, but how do I achieve something like that? Well, it's actually not the hardest thing in the world. The key is to start small. By taking an incremental approach, you're more likely to be successful. So start really by investing in the right partner. Choose a provider or a vendor who can take you from one line at one site and really help you evolve your digital maturity and really lean into your digital transformation to all of your production lines throughout your entire organization. Start thinking about some of the underpinnings of the key issues that you have today. Are they data-driven? So you can't make data-driven decisions. Are operators often referring to out-of-date SOPs? Is there a specific line that seems to produce more deviations? Think about those things that are really causing you problems today and think about how to tackle those first. Finally, and probably the most important, is to ensure that you have leadership support. What we see is that leaders often are looking at the bottom line. And it's really, really critical as you're selecting your vendor, as you're selecting your partner, to choose somebody who can work with you to compile ROI, to show actionable metrics, and to really be able to show what efficiencies can be gained as you increase your digital maturity. Many pharma and medtech companies choose what we like to call a modern MES. And a modern MES might be a new term to some of you. And likely most of you have heard of a manufacturing execution system before, but what comes to mind is something more traditional, where those vendors create efficiencies by automating lines and actually removing people from the equation. How we define a modern MES is it really seeks to empower operators to work more effectively. A modern MES typically leverages a no-code approach. It means that they are highly, highly configurable. They're fast to implement. They're simple to adopt. And they really enable you to ditch the paper in record time. And From that, you get benefits like improved collaboration, you can reduce errors, you can get that faster review and release, and you can really get those real-time status updates. You can really look and embrace a lot of the things that we've been talking about today. At MasterControl, we have what we call manufacturing excellence, which is our modern MES. And this was developed specifically for pharma and medtech manufacturers to reduce the burden of paper during production and really start to close those digital gaps in manufacturing. As I said earlier, MasterControl has almost 30 years in this industry, and we saw a lot of the issues that many of you face in production and created this solution to enable that end-to-end digitization within your organizations. With a highly configurable template builder, you can mimic your current processes, leading to rapid adoption and expansion, and really start streamlining production at all of your lines and sites. You can capture and share that production data, which we've talked about a bit today, which is really, really critical. You can share that data across systems and departments. You can seamlessly integrate your enterprise systems together, and all of this can start to help you advance to the next stage in your digital transformation journey. At the end of the day, the net of this is we're seeing that companies are transitioning to digital systems. And frankly, they are only going to become more mature over the next 5 years. And with that, I think it's pretty obvious that if you haven't started yet, it is critical to start thinking about this journey today so that your company doesn't get left behind. Consider what your systems look like today. If you might be facing some of the issues we've discussed, think about how you would approach a digital manufacturing project and prepare accordingly. And most importantly, start researching, start thinking about the things that are the most important to you and your organization to create the most success. Marty, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. I think the closing remarks that I would have are to embrace and use the digital maturity model where it's most effective. And that's allowing yourselves to take an honest view and an honest stock of where you are today, what is good about that, what you have planned in place, and where you are in that implementation or the selection and implementation cycle, and where you want to be. And to Caitlin's point about starting small, start small, but with purpose and intent to where you want to get in the maturity model, and use the one that we presented today, use an internal version that you've modified for your own needs and your own leadership expectations, but pick something to use as a framework, orient your organization towards it, get buy-in, and then work towards progressing along that journey in a meaningful and purposeful way. And to Caitlin's point, being able to check off those smaller steps and build on them will help you keep momentum with your digital journey and help you reach the stages of maturity that you're trying to get to. So thank you for joining us. We are going to make all of this research available, and it's something that you can engage with MasterControl to learn more about. We have individuals that can help take you through the research, help you, advise you on how it might apply to your organization. And we encourage you to reach out to us on that front. For right now, though, I'm going to welcome Jen back onto the stage, and we're going to do a Q&A.
All right, well, thank you, Marty, and thank you, Caitlin. Wonderful presentation. I hope that everybody out there was able to garner some valuable tidbits with all the different research elements that Caitlin and Marty were able to provide. Okay, well, we've come to that time where we're going to do our question and answer. Remember, if you do have a question, go ahead and enter it in the Q&A there on your screen. And it looks like we have a couple that have come in. So first off, you talked about a modern MES, and someone's wondering if you can elaborate a little bit more on the differences between modern and traditional, and what's the difference between those two MES products?
Sure, that's a great question. I think good place to start is, a traditional MES, these systems have been around for 20, 25 years. And in doing so, they were built a certain way. So in most cases, they've been built up over time. as what we often refer to as a monolithic system and an on-premise system. So these are deployed at your actual production facility. They're hosted there, and to set them up and to make changes to them typically requires what's essentially custom coding. So the benefit of those systems is that if you have a production line that is running the same product in very high volumes and running nearly continuously, you set up the MES, you code it, you configure it to precisely that product and precisely that process, and you run it as much as you can in that exact format and those exact parameters. In those cases, it's a great model. You realize your initial effort and your setup and your cost, because over time, you get to run as many products through it and without much change. When we say modern MES, a lot of times we're looking at an MES that's designed for all of the production scenarios that don't fit that model. And I think a lot of you out there should be able to recognize from your own production environments that there are products that are run in small batches. There are products that are run that change. They have variables to them. They have parameters that change. They're being personalized. They're being run not in a continuous manner, 24/7, 365. You might have a production run in April and you don't run it again until October. These still need systems that can help you digitize them and make sure that you realize all the benefits we discussed today. But that MES has to be highly flexible. So that's where you hear the no code configuration. You can change process, you can change parameters, you can set up a lot of different master batch records and templatize those, and then manage product families or recipes in a more efficient manner go through. The other thing is deployment time. All that custom coding on a legacy MES, you're talking a year to get it in place, to get it mapped to all of your environment, to get it coded the way you want, to get it operationalized. With a modern MES, we're usually talking anywhere from 90 to 120 days to get up live on your first production line and executing your first production records through there. So there are a number of other differences, but I think that's a good place to start today. Jen?
Yeah.
Do we have any more questions?
We do have more questions. So my next question is always one of my favorites, because as human beings, we all know change is hard. And I'm going to toss this one to Caitlin. But employees might not understand the value or even the purpose of moving to a new system, but just kind of viewing it as extra work, and that it's an additional learning curve. So how do you address the if it's not broke, don't fix it scenario?
That's a really good question. And as you said, human nature makes us not always embrace change. I would say I go back to really thinking about the manual processes and some of the things that Marty talked about how we see a lot of people kind of in this digital space, but they're not really connected. They're not really optimizing their processes and procedures. And one of the benefits of really embracing digital manufacturing in a modern MES is that you take a lot of what we could call issues with manual systems. You take a lot of the error issues, you take a lot of the reporting or the data inaccessibility and put those in the past. And beyond that, you can really start to think about how you scale this. So it's not just about how you optimize one line or one site, but really it's how do you optimize your entire operation? How do you configure your batch records or your production records in your manufacturing systems to really embrace whatever type of manufacturing you're doing, or to really embrace whatever type of therapeutic you're making? Marty mentioned a little bit about personalized therapeutics and how some of these processes are so highly customized. And as he noted with the traditional MES, If something's going to be running 24/7, 365, that's great. Otherwise, you're more than likely to be stuck on paper. You're more than likely going to continue kind of running into these different manual paper-based hurdles. And you're always going to have some amount of issue around being able to scale effectively, being able to really configure to the product that you're making without an outlay of a lot of people and a lot of kind of productivity wasted. One of the things that we like to talk about is rather than using your people to, check boxes and recheck work and scribble things on paper and cross it out and all those things, is really how do you enable your people to bring a lot of value to the organization? And that's what I'm always going to go back to is, not only are you going to fix a lot of issues, not only are you going to see a lot of optimization across your organization, but you're really going to be able to let the highly skilled people in your organization provide a lot of value to your organization.
Yeah, that's a great point. Sometimes we see change as just change, and we don't necessarily see change as an improvement. And I think that's kind of what you're getting to is that really, do you love jotting all that stuff down on paper? Do you love running your batch records back and forth between, for getting signatures and things like that? That's really, wasteful time, right? And that time could be freed up to do things more meaningful. And if I could add to that, one of the things we talk about when you're looking for a modern MES, you want to find something that's configurable to your process, that has familiarity with what you already have on paper, but now it's just presented on a tablet. That makes it a lot easier for your operators to adopt it. And that's something that you'll find in MasterControl's manufacturing solution is that when you go to configure your batch record, you can make it flow and have the steps be very similar and have it that look and feel of what you had on paper, but now only in a digital setting. So it does make that adoption side easier, makes change a little bit more bearable for everybody. Okay, so we have another question. I'll toss this one back to Marty. So what notable changes would our staff see after implementing a MES like MasterControl?
Okay, yeah, good question. I think we can kind of break this down a few ways. You can break your staff out into roles. And so if you think about a process engineer, today that process engineer is either manually defining the process, drafting the work instructions, getting those out into the operators and the shop floor. Or if they're in a legacy MES, they're working with developers to translate the process that they want to execute into the program that drives the MES. With modern MES and the no-code builder, that process engineer, so the source of the truth on the process that you're trying to execute against, can build it themselves. They can modify it, they can build it, they can build templates for it, and they can push it into production. And so they take control of that process. So for them, instead of taking their core strengths and what they bring to the organization and running it through a bunch of mediation of extra steps and extra people to help it move into production, they can put it straight into production. Another thing you would see is the operators on the shop floor. As Jen mentioned, one of the nice things is it will have the look and feel of the paper that they had before, just in a digital format. And if you select the right modern MES, you're selecting one with a really intuitive user interface so that operator can pick up and do their job exactly like they were doing their job before. So they don't have a change management or any drag in adoption because it's challenging to learn a new system or a new way of doing something. They can pick it up very quickly and move right into doing their day-to-day jobs, but with the extra advantage of not wasting the time correcting errors that are prevented by the system in the first place. And then you can look at things like your QA teams. The QA role, instead of manually reviewing 3,000-page batch records for some of the advanced therapeutics that are out there today, they are doing a review by exception process. So essentially, the modern MES is able to, at the end, generate a view that says, here are any exceptions that were made to the process and their potential impact on that process. Now, to make sure that everything is good for release, you're not reviewing everything, you're reviewing the things that could have caused an issue and making sure that they didn't. And that allows you to take those resources and instead of spending, days, weeks, month on batch review and release, you can have them refocus on things that are actually improving your quality processes and helping your organization create better, safer products and get them to market faster.
Okay, so our next question, would you be able to share some real world metrics from manufacturers that have digitized and gone fully paperless? So maybe some of the things that both Caitlin and Marty that you've talked about, are there some metrics out there that you can share with us that illustrate how a system like this provides value to the user? And I'll let you start, Caitlin.
Okay, great. Good question. If without results, what's the point, right? So we do see some really kind of amazing metrics and information come back from people who do use the system. We've heard on multiple occasions that people have reduced their data input errors on the line and in their production records by, like, they say 99%. That's sometimes a little hard to believe. But because of the checks and balances that you can build into a digital system, especially a smart digital system, like Marty was talking about a little bit, you really can see those data errors reduce significantly. We have seen a really vast improvement in the time it takes for review and release. As Marty just mentioned, particularly if you're looking at an advanced therapeutic, these batch records can be massive. They can be thousands of pages long. And when you have to do a page by page, line by line review of that, you can imagine how long that takes somebody. With, as Marty mentioned, the review by exception, you can really just look at the 1% of things that went wrong instead of the 99% of things that went right. And so we see, I think the numbers are around like 70 to 75% decrease in the time it takes for review and release post-production. We hear from customers a lot about deviations that, because there are all these checks and balances, because you can do corrections on the fly if you need to, because there are ways to put in things like planned deviations if you need to pivot to another supplier or something, that we're really seeing a reduction in deviations, which frankly can impact the bottom line of an organization significantly, and really gets people excited. The last thing I'll say before I hand it over to Marty is, we see an ROI in about 6 months. Most of our customers see a return on their investment in about 6 months. So we do understand that change can be challenging, and we do understand, that there are a lot of factors that go into making the choice to embrace a digital manufacturing environment. But we really support, and we really think that what we have in our modern MES enables our customers and our soon-to-be customers to be able to embrace it and to really see some great results from embracing a digital environment. Marty, would you add anything to that?
No, I think Caitlin provided a wealth of data points. I think the one thing I would, add to that is when you're selecting your system, work with your vendor, like us at MasterControl, to identify, how your process operates today, where your pain points are, what you're looking to improve, and then measure that as you implement the system and make sure that you're seeing that delta, because you have to have a sense of what you're trying to improve and what your current baseline is for that. And then when you implement the system, you can work towards the initial gains. And then a lot of times those initial performance gains hit a point where you then have to optimize process with the system and yield the next wave of gains. So I think it's an iterative process, and it always starts with a firm understanding of what the pain points are today, what the performance issues are today, and what you're trying to optimize. And then you can go from there.
Very good advice, very good advice, because the benefit can be different for everybody, right? Depending on your specific situation, so. All right, well, that's all the time that we have for questions today. I would really like to thank Marty and Caitlin again. I hope that everyone out there was able to find some key takeaways you can take back to your organization. I hope there's information you can share with your peers that will help you on your own digital transformation journey. Of course, if you have any additional questions or you'd like to request a demo, you can do that at www.mastercontrol.com. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.